Chapter 81. The Muslim Women's Rights Activists. Inaz's case generated international awareness to the way the woman is treated in the Third World in general and Muslim world in particular. The woman in that dark part of the world is vulnerable to all kinds of abuse and exploitation. Inaz had done no wrong to deserve such huge amount of injustice. She only chose to change her religion from Islam to Christianity and married her lover who happened to be from a different country and a follower of Christ. If a girl has done such a thing in the West, no one would harass her or persecute her. Inaz was interviewed by a group of women's rights activists. Those women were all Arabs and all Muslims. Their interview dug deep in the past life of the terribly abused and persecuted Sudanese apostate girl. They were able to bring to the surface startling discovery. Their discovery even astonished and perplexed them. They collectively reached to the unavoidable conclusion that the real culprit behind all the evils that befell Inaz was none other than the religion that she had boldly and courageously forsaken. Their findings created so much anger, resentment, and protest across the Middle East. Many prominent religious scholars and leaders in Egypt, Sudan, and other Arab countries through all media and internet avenues openly expressed their indignation and denounced the interview of those Arab feminists. They refused to address them as Arab women's rights activists, but referred to them as Arab feminists. They called them man-haters. Some of them demanded a legal action to be taken against them, while some condemned them as apostates from Islam and called for their punishment in accordance of the Sharia law. The Arab women's rights activists traced the root of Inaz's abuse and persecution, which went beyond those who hated and made several attempts to destroy her life. Starting from her Muslim father, who made 3 attempts to slay her. Firstly, her father almost killed her in Pune city when he heard rumor that his Muslim daughter married an African Sudanese boy without his knowledge and consent. The activists found out there were authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad which said a marriage of a girl without her wali, father, or another guardian is invalid. So, the Muslim father, empowered and supported by such a hadith, he could not be condemned alone without pointing finger at the founder of Islam who gave him this absolute right on his daughter. Secondly, Inaz's father and mother punished her and locked her up inside a dark room because she ran away from her gay, pimp, and abusive husband. Moreover, Inaz was condemned by the Muslim Society and the Islamic Sharia law because she left her husband's house without his knowledge and without a male muharram. Again, there was an authentic hadith of the Prophet of Islam which forbade the woman to go out of her house without the company of her husband or male muharram. Instead of trying to find out whether Inaz was truly being abused by her husband and his Saudi friends, the Islamic law and the Muslim Society put the blame on her and condemned her as rebellious wife. Her bold action was counted as rebellion. The Quran gave her father the right to beat his rebellious daughter, Surah 3:34. Thirdly, her father became extremely furious when he came to know his daughter had forsaken Islam and become a Christian. He decided to go to India and punish his daughter for the abominable deed she had done. Islam strictly forbids conversion and prescribes the capital punishment to an apostate. This severe punishment is based on authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. Also, the first rightly guided caliph, Abu Bakr al-Sadiq, fought against the Muslim apostates and killed many of them. Accordingly, Inaz's father travelled all the way to Pakistan and smuggled himself across the Indian border. He then purchased a dagger and rod and attacked his daughter and her Christian husband. If Inaz's husband didn't courageously defend his wife, her father would have beheaded her in broad daylight. The criminal father was arrested, tried, condemned, and sentenced to 10 years jail term under hard labor. At present, he was serving his sentence in a maximum security prison in India. By condemning Inaz's father, the Indian secular court also indirectly condemned Islam, which gave him the right to kill his apostate daughter. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Whoever changes his religion, kill him." After talking about the abusive and tyrant father, the Arab Muslim women's rights activists shifted their focus to the Sudanese embassy in New Delhi, India, which plotted 3 times the kidnap and transfer of the apostate Inaz to Sudan. In their first attempt, they sent 2 Sudanese diplomats to Bombay to execute their plot, which was hatched inside the embassy. Those 2 diplomats bribed some Muslim police officers and through them raided the apartment of Inaz and her Christian husband and falsely accused them as drugs dealers. They then threw the husband behind bars and took Inaz directly to the Bombay International Airport and attempted to deport her to Sudan against her wish. Their plot was foiled at the last moment by a good Indian Christian man. In consequence of that, the 2 diplomats and a leader of the Sudanese Muslim Brotherhood were arrested and Inaz was rescued from those corrupt Muslim police officers. Of course, the Sudanese embassy did what it did because Islam has zero tolerance for the sin of apostasy. There is no freedom of choice in this regard. In the second attempt, the embassy resorted to more evil plot than the first. They hired anti-social elements in India known as Gondas. Those Gondas were Muslim terrorists. They paid them for carrying out their dirty work. Those Muslim terrorists dressed up as police officers and raided the apartment where Inaz and her husband were staying with some southern Sudanese Christians in New Delhi. They also falsely accused Inaz and another Indian girl of being prostitutes in disguise and arrested them. 4 of them took the Indian girl to a farmhouse and brutally raped her, while the remaining 2 took Inaz in a taxi to the New Delhi International Airport and tried to put her in a direct flight and send her to Khartoum. Somehow, Inaz managed to fool them and escaped. The Sudanese embassy's third attempt was the current one, which was frustrated by Inaz herself during her transit in Doha International Airport. Like before, the embassy enlisted the help of some Muslim top officials in the Bombay police enforcement. Muslims' fingerprints were always found in all the evil plots against the apostate Inaz. In the last attempt, Inaz was falsely accused of being the main cause of a religious riot, which resulted in the death of many Sudanese students in India. Therefore, she was arrested, severely flogged, and forced by the corrupt police of Bombay to admit crimes she had not done. She wasn't allowed to have a lawyer to defend her in court. As a matter of fact, she was condemned by those Muslim police officers without appearing in any court of law. She was having with her inside the jail her 6-year-old baby daughter. The heartless Indian police took her baby from her and in the same day put her in a Qatar Airways plane and flown her to the Ahmed International Airport. Neither Inaz nor her husband was informed about the extradition until the last moment. Inaz came to know about the plot only at the Bombay International Airport. In front of the airport, her baby was snatched from her hands and taken away. At that difficult moment, Inaz was told she wasn't going to see her baby again. Then the ruthless police of Bombay told her they were extraditing her with the help of her Sudanese embassy. Her embassy provided the emergency traveling document and her air ticket. Her final destination was the Khartoum International Airport and not the Doha International Airport. If Inaz had reached Khartoum, she would be cast into a dark dungeon known as the Ghost House. Any person entered one of those Sudanese concentration camps, he didn't come out again. And in case Inaz was tried by a Sharia court, she would be condemned as an apostate from Islam and put to death as an infidel. After her execution, her corpse would be burned with fire. The Sharia law forbids burial of the apostate from Islam. His dead body has to be treated like a carcass of a dead animal and disposed of in that inhumane manner. The rightly guided caliphs, Abu Bakr and Ali, both burned the executed bodies of the apostates from Islam. After mentioning those horrifying details about Inaz's father's 3 attempts to murder her, and the 3 plots to deport her by the Sudanese embassy, the Arab women's rights activists stated briefly the heavy persecutions that the Sudanese apostate girl was subjected to by the Sudanese Muslim students at the University of Bombay. Inaz was hated, boycotted, and persecuted by her country fellow citizens because of her conversion from Islam to Christianity. Lastly, the Arab Muslim women's rights activists mentioned a childhood abuse that Inaz was subjected to as a child by her own parents. They referred to her female genital mutilation which had been done to her at the age of 5. The activists found 3 authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad which endorsed that barbaric and inhuman practice. The first hadith was mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, the second hadith in Sahih Muslim, and the third hadith in Sunan Abu Dawud. Therefore, the parents shouldn't be blamed alone, but the one who encouraged such evil practice at fault as well. Conclusion: the underlying cause of her abuses and persecutions is the religion of Islam. The Arab Muslim women's rights activists' great discovery is like that of the Copernican revolution in the West. If their conclusion is accepted, it would definitely bring about a huge paradigm shift in the Middle East and the Muslim world. It will change the Muslim world from a religious society to a secular society. The Copernican revolution was the paradigm shift from the Ptolemaic model of the heavens, which described the cosmos as having Earth stationary at the center of the universe, to the heliocentric model with the Sun at the center of the solar system. Accordingly, those Arab Muslim women's rights activists wanted to change the universally accepted theory which put the Muslim scholars, leaders, clerics, imams, terrorist groups, and terrorists in the center of criticism, and that by putting all the blame on them and falsely accusing them of misinterpreting the Islamic texts, the Quran and Hadiths. Nevertheless, according to their new theory, the religion of Islam and its founder are supposed to be the center of all attacks and refutations. For the teachings of the Quran and Hadiths inspired the Muslim scholars to come up with all those terrorizing teachings and misogynistic doctrines. Therefore, the teachings of the Quran and the Hadiths of Muhammad inevitably produce abusers and terrorists. Islam is inherently violent and evil religion. As such, it can't neither be reformed nor improved. Islam has long ago been interpreted and fixed in rigid religious laws which are embodied in the draconian law that came to be known as the Sharia law. Accordingly, Islam is the only religion in the world that is not open to criticism and reformation. To reform Islam is to destroy its shell and set its followers once and for all free from its tyrannical teachings. Accordingly, there is no such thing as modern Islam or moderate Muslims. As practical examples, the Muslim women's rights activists referred to the case of the Saudi teenager girl who left Islam when she discovered it was the cause of her abuse and suffering and sought refugee asylum and resettled in Toronto, Canada. Likewise, the recent case of the two Saudi sisters, 20-year-old and 18-year-old, who converted out of Islam and fled to Hong Kong, China, and demanded to be resettled in a country that believes in the woman's rights. Inaz's conversion and the conversion of those three Saudi young girls were just a hidden tsunami beneath a frozen sea of snow or molten lava of a volcano waiting for a small crack to erupt. In Egypt alone, 2 million youth left Islam and became atheists. By their conversions and demands, those 4 young girls have rebelled against all their religious restrictions and their draconian social system that embodied in the Sharia law, which showed favor to the man and allowed him to oppress women as daughters, sisters, and wives. Therefore, if the conclusion of those Arab Muslim women's rights activists is accepted, then the Middle East will change overnight into a secular society same or less than the secular Europe. Instead of seeing the Saudi women putting on black burqas which make them look like scary black ghosts, we will see them walking in the streets of Riyadh, Mecca, and Medina in shirts, trousers, and shorts. Also, instead of walking behind their husbands and fathers like jailers and prisoners, we will see them walking hand in hand with their lovers and their classmates. Nevertheless, this inevitable conclusion by the Arab women's rights activists stirred up the religious sentiments of Muslims in the Middle East, North Africa, and around the world. Muslims protested and condemned Inaz and those who interviewed her and drew that false conclusion. They said, Islam is innocent from those malicious accusations and has nothing to do with the evils that Inaz's father and embassy had done to her. Some intellectual Muslims argued that the Arab women's rights activists had used a fallacious method which led them to arrive at that unfair evaluation and conclusion of a heavenly religion which has been revealed by the Almighty Allah.